Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a video that I have been meaning to do for a very long time, and I thought now was the perfect time to at least do a part one. I'll probably end up doing more of these kind of recommendation videos in the future, but I wanted to talk about mostly romance books, but I also wanted to mention some YA contemporaries that feature plus-sized heroines or plus-sized female main characters. I'll probably do a version of this video that features plus-sized male main characters or bigger male main characters. I still don't know how to refer to larger men. Like, for some reason, to say plus size sounds odd to me. I don't know. But that's gonna take me a lot longer to compile a list of, because I have yet to read that many books that feature that trope. So if you guys have recommendations, definitely leave them in the comments below. But without further ado, let's just get into the list for today. So I'm gonna start off with, I think I have 3 YA contemporary books, and then I'll get into the adult romances. So first things first, we have To Be Honest. This is by Maggie Ann Martin. I know I've recommended this book a lot in the past, especially when I've done videos about like underrated YA contemporary novels. If you want to check out those videos, I'm sure I'll have them linked up in the cards above. But this one is about our main character, Savannah. And this book and the book I'm going to talk about in a second, they both have a trope that I'm not in love with, where the mom is very overbearing and very negative towards the main character. So I would definitely be aware of that before going into both of the books that I'm going to talk about. So this is essentially a coming of age story for Savannah. She's a senior in high school and she's looking at going to college in the next school year. And what I really loved about this book was the body positivity. There are so many amazing quotes in this. The way that she stands up for herself to her mother is absolutely amazing. Like I said, I don't love the trope of like the overbearing mother, but at the same time I loved seeing Savannah stand up for herself. So I definitely recommend this one. Also, there's a really adorable romance as well. Next book I want to mention is Fat Chance Charlie Vega by Crystal Maldonado. This is the other book that features the overbearing mother trope. So again, be aware of that before going into it. However, this book is fantastic. I gave this one 5 stars. I loved it even more than To Be Honest. The plot of this one's kind of messy because we have Charlie, our main character. She's had a crush on this guy for a really long time, but it turns out that the guy also has a crush on Charlie's best friend, who is thin and beautiful and all those things. I just found this character in this book in particular to be so relatable to middle school / high school Rachel. Her character arc was just beautiful to see, and I noted in my Goodreads review that I haven't been this emotionally invested in a YA novel in a very long time. Also, there is an adorable romance with this guy Brian, who I think is also a bigger guy. So I think that's great representation as well. And then last but not least, for the YA contemporaries, we have Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazamian. This could also be considered historical fiction because this takes place in the 1990s in New York City. We have 3 major main characters. Reza, who is Iranian, he moves to the United States to live with his family. Like, they now have like a blended family situation, and then he meets this guy Art, who is openly gay. And then Judy, our third main character, she's a fashion designer. She is plus sized, and she has this uncle named Steven, who is an openly gay man, and he has AIDS. And so the 3 of these main characters get involved in this activist group for people with AIDS. And there's so many beautiful things going on in the story, but I really loved Judy's character and how she is a fashion designer and how she makes these amazing clothes for herself, because there aren't that many great options for her in normal stores, and that's still a thing that a lot of plus size people like myself deal with to this day, is that the selection of clothing for plus size people just isn't amazing. But yeah, I loved her. I loved all 3 of these main characters. I cried while reading this, so definitely know going in that it's an emotional time, but it's also just a stunning book as well. Next, I'm going to talk about adult romances, and I wanted to start off with some historical romance recommendations. So the first one I'm going to bring up is Willful Depravity by Ingrid Hahn. This is a book that I have brought up quite a few times on my channel. I'm sure that you've noticed whenever I talk about underrated historical romances, I bring this one up because it was just such a fun time, and like nobody has read it according to Goodreads. So this is about our main character Patience. She is definitely plus sized, and people are very mean to her about that. I mean, during this, I think this takes place in the Regency era in London. people definitely didn't accept or understand plus size people at all. So yeah, people are pretty mean to her. But there is this man, Giles. He is a Marquis, and first of all, he's a bisexual hero, which we love to see that representation. Also, he's an artist, and he is just enthralled by Patience from the second he sees her. And I remember this particularly steamy scene that happens like the night that they meet at this ball. It was all the fire emojis. But yeah, this is just such a fun time. I need to reread this because I really had a good time with this one. Next recommendation I have is Say Yes to the Marquis by Tessa Dare. I'll be upfront with you guys, this is not my absolute favorite Tessa Dare novel ever, but I still had a fun time with it. I gave it 4 stars. This is book 2 in her Castles Ever After series. You can read these as standalones, of course. So this one is about our main character Cleo, who's plus size, and I do want to point out that she has some family members that are pretty negative towards her about her size, so be aware of that before going into this. But we also have our other main character, Rafe, and Cleo has been engaged to Rafe's, I want to say half-brother? I can't quite remember, but his brother for like 8 years, and she is just over it. And Piers has also been on the continent like this whole time, so nobody's seen him. And so Rafe is just desperately trying to get Cleo to actually go through with this marriage, but the two of them end up falling in love. He's also a pretty ruthless prize fighter, and yeah, this was just a really fun time. Also, I love this book because it has kind of a non-traditional happily ever after, because instead of the two of them getting married and having kids, I believe they end up getting a little puppy at the end, and that was just so freaking adorable. Next up for a historical romance, I have 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake by Sarah McLean. This is definitely a booktube darling at this point. I know that Jess and Dana absolutely adore this book, and for very good reason. I also gave it 5 stars when I read it. This is book 1 in Sarah McLean's Love by Numbers series. I think this was also her debut, which is amazing because I think this book is absolutely fantastic. It is about our main character, Calpurnia, and in present day, she's 28. She is definitely a spinster at this point. Again, this takes place in the Regency era. All of these books that I've mentioned take place in that time. And so because she knows she's never gonna get married, she decides that she wants to live her life and just do whatever the hell she wants. And so she comes up with this list of things that she wants to do, basically a bucket list. We have our other main character, Gabriel St. John, who is a Marquis, and he agrees to help her complete all the things on this list. And it is just such a fun time. I've also read book 3 in this series, and it's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, I do remember it being mentioned quite a few times that Calpurnia is at least curvy, and some people judge her for that. But I just love that Gabriel thinks she is just everything, and he calls her Empress. And yeah, that might sound kind of cheesy when I'm saying it to you, but I promise it's not cheesy. Last but certainly not least for the historical romance recommendations, I have to talk about what is definitely at this point my favorite historical romance novella, and that is The Devil's Submission by Nicola Davidson. So this is just an amazing premise. We have Eliza, our main character. She is plus sized, and this is a marriage in trouble story. We all know that's my favorite trope. And we have our other main character, Grayson, who also co-owns a BDSM sex club with 2 of his best friends. So there's that, but there's more to this. Eliza is a dom and Grayson is a submissive. And the reason why their marriage is in trouble though was basically because of miscommunication. So one of their mutual friends is getting married, and so they're forced to be in contact with one another again. Do not be surprised if this ends up in my like top 10 romances of the year. It's absolutely spectacular. Clearly I need to read more from Nicola Davidson because I could just rave and rave about this novella forever. So now to get into some contemporary romance recommendations, I'm just gonna mention an author because all of the books that I've read by her feature plus-sized heroines, and that's Talia Hibbert. So first things first, we have to talk about the Brown Sisters trilogy. We have Get a Life, Chloe Brown, then Take a Hint, Dani Brown, and my personal favorite of the series is Act Your Age, Eve Brown. Another book that may end up as one of my top 10 romances of the year. So amazing. But yeah, all 3 of these books are about the Brown sisters. You can definitely read them as standalones. They all feature different tropes and different stories and all of those things. I will say, if you read the first and or second books in this series and you weren't blown away by them, I wholeheartedly recommend that you give this third book a chance, because I think that it's totally on another level. It is the one book that I've read by Talia Hibbert that I've given 5 stars. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a Grump Sunshine trope featuring 2 main characters that have autism, and it's just everything. Eve is such an endearing character. I love her so much, and Jacob is just the cutest Grump hero ever. Like, please read this book if you haven't. And then a couple of other books I wanted to mention by Talia Hibbert. The first one is A Girl Like Her. This one features a reclusive heroine. I believe she also has autism. And then there is this ex-military man, I believe, who moves into the apartment next door, and they start bonding over comic books. Like, how adorable is that? And then the final book that I want to mention by Talia Hibbert is Mating the Huntress. This one is quite a bit different because it's a paranormal romance novella, and this one features our main character Chastity. She is a part of this family of werewolf hunters, and then Luke, who is a werewolf. And from the moment he saw Chastity working at a convenience store, he just fell head over heels in love with her. And so she realizes that he's a werewolf, and so she agrees to go on a date with him, but on the date she tries to kill him, and things go on from there. It's absolutely fantastic. I remember after reading this, I went onto Twitter and like begged Talia Hibbert to write more novellas in this series, because according to Goodreads, this is book 1 in a paranormal romance novella series. And so Talia Hibbert said, rest assured, I am planning on writing more in the series, so I hope another one of those novellas comes out maybe this year or next year. We will just have to see. Next is a book that I just finished a few days ago, and my goodness, once again, don't be surprised if this ends up in my top 10 romances of 2021. It's spectacular. This is Ever After Always by Chloe Leese. This is book 3 in her Bergman Brothers series. Once again, you can read these books as standalones, but I would recommend reading these books in order, actually, because it's just fun to see all the Bergman family members together throughout the 3 books so far. But this one is on another level. Even though I gave the other 2 books in the series 5 stars, like, this is something else, because it is a marriage in trouble story between our main characters, Aiden and Freya. Freya is the eldest of the Bergman siblings, and her and Aiden have been married, I want to say, 10 years or so. And there's just a lot of miscommunication going on between them, and so their marriage reaches a breaking point. They decide to start going to therapy together. And then there's also this Hawaii family vacation that all the Bergmans go on, and so of course Aiden and Freya go as well. It's just amazing to see these 2 work through their issues, not only individually but together as a couple. But then there's also so many amazing and funny scenes with the other Bergman siblings, and their parents are amazing. And I quickly wanted to mention, since this is a video about plus-size heroines, that yes, Freya is plus-size, but it's not a big deal. And that's one of the things I loved about this. It's really only discussed a little bit throughout this book that Freya, for the most part, loves and accepts her body, but of course there are some times and some days where that's just not very easy. And Aiden reassures her that he loves her just the way that she is, because she does bring up that she's gained some weight since they first got together, and he's like, I don't care about that. You are just stunning and I love you. So I quickly wanted to mention 2 books in the same series. This is from the Wicked Villain series by Katie Roberts. So we have A Worthy Opponent and The Sea Witch. So if you don't know, this is essentially a series of Disney movie retellings with an erotic twist. And it also features essentially the main character of those Disney movies getting together with the villain of the story, right? So this one, A Worthy Opponent, is about Tink and Hook. I did want to mention that this series takes place in a very contemporary feeling world. There's no magic or paranormal things going on at all. But yes, Tink is plus sized, and she ends up having a marriage of convenience with Hook, who she has some history with. And Peter was a man that she was in a very abusive relationship with, and now he is back and making her life a living hell, kind of. And then the other book in this series that features a plus-size main character is The Sea Witch. This is a retelling of The Little Mermaid. Ursa is the plus-size character, and then we also have Zuriel, who is like Ariel, and then Alaric, who is like the Eric character. And this one was probably my least favorite of the series, but it was still a fun time. Definitely go into these books knowing that the plots are kind of ridiculous and convoluted, but like I just didn't care. I had such a fun time. Also, these are definitely dark erotic romances, so know that going in as well, but they are absolutely fantastic. Next up, we have a very popular contemporary romance, and for very good reason. This is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I have not talked about this book in a long time because it is so popular, and this is a book that is featured in a lot of videos about plus size main characters, but it's just fantastic. I still had to bring it up in this video anyway. But we have our main characters, Olive and Ethan. This is kind of a hate to love, enemies to lovers thing going on. They definitely do not like each other at the beginning of this. Essentially what's going on is that Olive's twin sister Amy is getting married to Ethan's brother. And so Ethan's the best man, Olive is the maid of honor. And at the wedding, pretty much everyone except for Olive and Ethan eat this seafood that has gone bad. And so everybody gets sick, including the happy couple. So they are not able to go on their honeymoon, and it's a non-refundable experience thing going on in Hawaii. And so they persuade Olive and Ethan to go on the honeymoon for them. And it's a fun time. Definitely gives me vibes of, what is it, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, if you love that movie. And I will say this does not have any steam really going on. All of the sex scenes were fade to black, which can be annoying sometimes, but I know a lot of readers who prefer their romances to not have much heat, so I thought I would mention that as well. And then last but certainly not least, I had to mention Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. All of Olivia Dade's books feature plus size main characters. I definitely need to read more of her like indie published books. This was her first book published with Avon, and this is book 1 in a companion romance series. This one is about our hero Marcus, who is a very famous actor, and April, who is a cosplayer. Things get very interesting because April posts a picture of herself onto Twitter of her cosplay from the show that Marcus acts in, and people are not very nice to her about her cosplaying because she's plus sized and the character in the show isn't. And so Marcus decides to stand up for her and asks her on a date via Twitter. And things go on from there. There's a lot of other things going on in this book for sure. One of the things that I loved about this book was Marcus and how he was dealing with his learning disability. I think he has dyslexia. Book 2 in this series is coming out really soon, and I cannot wait to read it. All right, guys, that's going to be it for my recommendations of books featuring plus size heroines. Definitely leave me a comment down below if you have any recommendations for me of books that feature plus size characters of any and all genders. I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you in advance if you do. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!